Hey guys, so I want to make a quick video on what I'm doing for League Start. Not much of a guide, but more so here's what I'm doing. If you want to follow me, feel free to. If you know me in the past, if you followed my guides, you know I usually have a pretty in-depth details of what I'm doing, step-by-step process, multiple POBs. You know, if you're more new a player, I usually do have a full FAQ list for everything that I'm doing to build, like easy to ask questions and all that. So yeah, if you want to follow me, feel free to. Keep in mind, it's not a build guide. You can't really make a build guide before the game launches. The full passive skill trees aren't out yet. So yeah, this is just my plan on what I'm doing. Might be good, might be bad. I do think it'll be extremely strong. I do think the build I'm playing is going to be extremely good. I'm really convinced that it's definitely going to be one of the best builds in the game. But we'll see. Numbers may change when the game actually launches. So yeah. So honestly, I am playing Deadeye. A big surprise, right? So originally I had no plan to play as Ascendancy, but the more they revealed this Ascendancy and the more they revealed other Ascendancies, really made me go back to Deadeye. It's just very, very strong in PoE 2. First things first, if you're wondering, okay, how am I going to path at the start of the tree? Let's just go over that real quick. This is probably going to be the path of node. We don't know all the nodes here, but we can kind of make educated guesses. So, you know, take all the proj nodes, get some movement speed, get some projectile speed, go over here, get blur, then go straight to here into these stun nodes and projectile damage nodes. These are going to be pretty strong. After that, this is probably the end of Act 1, maybe start of Act 2. I think you go down this way. You would potentially path down here and get these potential projectile nodes. I'm not sure because we don't know all the skill tree. Like I said, this is a potential I'm going to do. Then, you know, go down here and maybe get these landing nodes, maybe get these LE nodes, go down here, get this like point blank stuff, and then get this big bow wheel, right? That's the potential plan. I can't say that's what I'm going to do because we don't know the full skill tree. But like I said, I usually have pretty good explanation of what I'm doing when I'm playing my build. So my plan is I'm going to have the full FAQ list for League Start like always. And I'm going to put, you know, my skill tree in this list as I play. So if you want to follow along, you know, I'll have a step-by-step skill tree instruction essentially for those that want to follow me. So yeah, that is my initial plan though for like Act 1 and Act 2 is to get all these nodes, then get these nodes, and then after that, you know, look at the tree and see what I can get and see what's the most efficient. It shouldn't be that bad though, because apparently respecing in PoE 2 is quite free relative to PoE 1. So even my skill trees are like a little bit messy to start, it shouldn't matter. I can easily respec. Next things first is my Ascendancy tree. Ascendancy tree, I'm just going to go point blank first. So you get specialization, get point blank into the +1 proj. This is most likely what I'm going to do. After that, get Tailwind. There's a chance I also get Tailwind first and then respec out of Tailwind and then go to +1 proj later on. That also makes sense because I do think Tailwind is way stronger than that of point blank. So this is a possibility as well, or just keep Tailwind. Tailwind is very, very strong. If you don't know what it does, it gets 10% move speed, 30% skill speed, and 150% evasion rated at 10 stacks. You do lose all Tailwind stacks on hit, but I think a hit in PoE 2 is way less likely to happen, especially to do dodge compared to PoE 1, as there's not like 500 monsters on your screen. So yeah, this is my initial plan, most likely point blank into Endless Munitions, into Tailwind, into Windward, maybe mess around with the Frenzy nodes if Snipe or Barrage or Rain of Arrows are looking good, then I'll definitely go here as well. So yeah, that's the skill tree. Let's get into all the nice details now. Plans, start as bows, potentially try grenades. Most likely I won't do crossbow attacks unless they're really looking OP. But yeah, want to stick with bows, I will try grenades. Why did I? Extremely strong Ascendancy, one of the best, more damage than Mercenary for grenades or the bow playstyle. I would say Merc is only equal or better if you're strictly using crossbow attacks, but if you're doing grenades or bows, then I do think Deadeye is just better. Well, Deadeye be squishy? So this is probably the most common question I've been asked. Like, hey, isn't Deadeye squishy? This is not PoE 1. You really have to change your mindset. PoE 1 and PoE 2 are entirely different games. Being ranged in this game automatically makes you way tankier than like most melee classes in general. But the answer is no. The reason for this, if you look at melee in PoE 2 versus range in PoE 2, the only thing melee is getting is slightly more life from strength and some armor. You know, in PoE 1, they're going to 8 endurance charges, they're going to 20% fortify, they're going to 85 to 90 max res. This does not exist in PoE 2. They don't have this. So the only advantage melee has versus range of PoE 2 is slightly more life from strength. They might have like 50 more, 60 more strength than us, or maybe like 100 more strength, which is only 300 to 400 life. It is like a difference, but it's not like a big deal, and some armor. But I don't think the armor is a big deal. I actually do think evasion is a better stat than armor, because evasion at least affects spells, while armor only affects physical spells and won't affect any of the LE hits. So yeah, I don't think melee is actually that much more tanky or other classes in general. I think all classes are relatively equally tanky, unless ES ends up being OP. Also, Deadeye in the endgame might actually be pretty tanky with the defensive shell I'm trying to plan for here. So it's going to be dodge, ghost dance. Ghost dance is pretty much the same thing in PoE 2 as in PoE 1, around 500 ES. and this 500 ES makes up for the life difference that strength builds have over you. You should have roughly the same amount of like max hit as them now, because they might have 3.5 kill life, you're gonna have 3 kill life, 500 ES, and you're gonna recharge that ES with Ghost Dance, so you're actually kind of like the same max hit as a regular strength build, and 30% DR from reward, which is gonna be really reliable for bosses, less reliable for mapping, but still extremely good, and then potentially 20% DR from a feeble. So overall, like versus a melee character or versus like a witch hunter, you're really just as tanky or even more tanky in certain scenarios. I really do like the defense capabilities of Deadeye, especially as a ranged character. The more and more I watch videos, the more and more I see gameplay, being in range is really a massive benefit in PoE 2. So I'm really not worried about my defense at all. I plan on killing all the bosses of my character. So yeah, that's my thoughts on, is Deadeye squishy? TLDR is no. So here, I want to quickly go over my Act 1 plan. Now I'm doing this on this sheet and not the website, because PoE2skills.com does not have all the skill gems, so I can't show you my full build. So yeah, this is just the Act 1 plan. The Act 1 plan is two things: either lightning arrow with chain, so only after getting multiple projectiles for lightning rod. So your number one priority is going to be lightning rod with multiple projectiles, and then after you get multi-proj, you'll want to get chain on lightning arrow. For clearing, you might swap the chain out with the multiple projectiles just to see how it feels, because for clearing with chain on LA, chain gives you 50% damage reduction, so it might not be that great for clearing, but it's very, very potent for bosses, and I'll get down to the math below soon. Potentially good in Act 1 and Act 2 is also Over Storms. Once again, I'll go over the math on this in a second. Then of course, you're also going to use one of the best bow skills in the game, Freezing Salvo. If you don't know what the skill does, it's just a massive nuke. It does essentially 1040% weapon damage every 8 seconds. It's a free support with Hourglass. Hourglass essentially has no downside on this, but yet you charge up the skill. It takes like 7 seconds to charge up, and then you can shoot this huge 1000% nuke, and you can do it every 8 seconds with Hourglass. Very, very good skill, very strong skill. You're probably always going to be using this for like any bow setup. Low priority for skill gems, so I don't know how many skill gems you drop in Act 1, but yeah, low priority would be Escape Shot. I'm not sure how it's going to feel to use, not sure how good it will be to use, but do try it out, I guess. If you get a spell skill gem, just don't prioritize it over any of these. Also, remember to keep your skills updated in levels. When you get a higher skill gem, you can craft the same skill gem the skill you're using to make it a higher level. And potential crossbow swap for flash grenades. Flash grenades seemed really potent for some build up in the campaign from the videos I've watched, so I might try this, might not. I'll see how I'm feeling. But some of the bosses do seem pretty strong for campaign. Some supports to consider using. So if you get spare support gem drops in the campaign, these are some you can look to pick up. Conduction for more shock buildup, Innervate for extra damage when you shock an enemy, so it's like free damage to your skills. And lane damage, this could be okay if you're only doing lane damage. Fast attacks, good support Jeff Lane Arrow, and weapon elemental damage, which is 25% more weapon elemental damage. So these are all solid support gems, but do prioritize multiple projectiles first, and then chain for Lane Arrow, or potentially chain for Over Storms. At level 45, when I unlock cluster grenades, I might try it out. It does seem extremely strong, so why not? If I do like cluster grenades, if it does feel good, then I might add some crossbow support as well. Once again, this is, we'll see when I get there, because this is probably gonna be like Act 4 or something. We'll see when I get there, because this is probably gonna be like Act 1 Cruel, so it is a little bit far away. But yeah, I do want to try out cluster grenades when I get it. Seems very potent for extra boss damage, and you can still be a primary bow build with this. You just swap to your crossbow, throw your cluster grenades, and swap back to bow, and it's like a 10-second recharge, so it's like, it's kind of meant for this playstyle, swapping weapons. Endgame, I'm still deciding at the moment, but I think the main damage skill I'm going to use either Rain of Arrows or Barrage plus Snipe. Barrage plus Snipe seems extremely strong, maybe one of the highest damage skills in the game now, especially with the Rain of Arrows nerfed. And if you are unaware, yeah, Rain of Arrows has been nerfed apparently, so unfortunate. And then either like Lane Arrow or Ice Shot for clear. It's kind of undecided, but yeah, we'll see. Freezing Salvo is also always going to be good. You're going to keep this in your bow set no matter what you're going to do. And potential endgame horrors. Wind Dancer looks really good. Ghost Dance, Cast on Shock or Cast on Crit. And then potentially Blasphemy and put a Feeble into Blasphemy, or put in Feeble and Cast on Crit. There's definitely a lot of stuff you can do here, and I'm still exploring with it. But I'm not like too focused on this right now, because Spirit is more of an endgame thing. You don't really have Spirit at all in Act 1 or Act 2. You have like 30 Spirit and 60 Spirit. So I'm not too worried about this. But Wind Dancer plus Ghost Dance does seem very, very strong. If you're unsure what Wind Dancer does, it gives you 60% more evasion, and the evasion resets if you get hit by a melee attack, but it does not reset if you get hit by a ranged attack or a spell, so it's very unlikely to fall off, as you shouldn't be getting hit by that many melee attacks as a ranged playstyle. And Ghost Dance is the exact thing in PoE 1, it just gives you energy shield back when you get hit. Very, very strong, and there's a few ways to get some ES on the tree. To be more exact, the Trickster nodes where you get energy shield per 12 evasion in your chest, does seem quite strong. And there's also the helmet one as well, where you get evasion per energy on your helmet. So yeah, that's my plan for aura subs right now. Might change, but seems pretty good for what I see. Now, last thing I want to talk about real quick is the damage math for Act 1 and Act 2. So why would you potentially use Orb of Storms? So Orb of Storms is looking extremely good for damage, especially on bosses. So this is what quick math I did. This should be quite accurate though. So if you're playing Chain with Lightning Arrow and 6 rods on the ground, so this would be 2 casts of Lightning Rods. Every time you do 1 Lightning Arrow hit, it's essentially, this math right here ends up equaling 371% damage. The reason why the math is like this is that Lightning Arrow with Chain essentially does 2 6x chain bolts. So the Lightning Arrow on PvDB is wrong. What this actually does, sends out 2 bolts to nearby enemies, and those 2 bolts both chain 2 times. So if you have the chain support gem, this will make them chain 6 times, as chain is +1 chain and then doubles your chain amount. You would get essentially 2 bolts that each chain 6 times, which means Lightning Arrow hits the boss, and then 6 chains happens on your 6 Lightning Rods, and it happens one more time, so a total of 12 hits. So that's how the math ends up here, which is 371% effectiveness of added damage per Lightning Arrow used, assuming you have 2 Lightning Rods on the ground. Math for Orb of Storms is slightly higher, and can get really insane later on as well. But yeah, you get 9 rods on the ground, so this will require 1 more rod cast. You get 3 rods with LMP. And you also have to cast Orb of Storms, and now this Orb of Storms will be with Chain. So now your Lightning Arrow won't have a negative damage multiplier, which will feel better for clear. But yeah, essentially this is the Lightning Arrow damage, plus the number of times Orb of Storms should hit in the duration, plus the rod damage. So this ends up being 442% effective added damage, which is, roughly 20% more damage. The downside here, of course, is that you have to use Orb of Storms, so you have to use one more button, and you have to cast 1 more rod, which is not even that much of a downside, because when you cast Lightning Rod, it will proc Orb of Storms. So yeah. The really big upside of this playstyle though is that you can also spam rods with Orb of Storms and not to cast Lightning Arrow. So you can put down your Orb of Storms and just keep casting Lightning Rod, and this will be a ton of damage, and it will be pretty effective because you'll constantly be repositioning your Lightning Rod, so even if the boss moves, it shouldn't matter. Now this is a playstyle you would only use for a boss. Don't do this for clearing. It would be absolutely trash for clearing, but for a boss, this can be really potent, and I might try it out. Once again, if you want to see what I'm doing, just feel free to check my live stream. I'm gonna be streaming like 30+ hours in the first day. So yeah, if you want to see what I'm doing. Anyway, I'm definitely might try this out in Act 1. It's only 1 skill gem just to mess around Orb of Storms, so I think it's definitely worth checking out. As I say here, Orb of Storms playstyle is only 20% more damage and has upside not nerfing your Lightning Arrow damage, which is really nice for clear. The downside is you kind of have to be melee. The Lightning Arrow with Lightning Rod's playstyle is a lot easier because you can just be full range. But with Orb of Storms, you kind of had to be in melee range, had to press more button, and need to attack with a rod 1 more time, which, like I said, it's not a big downside, as your Orb of Storms will proc on the existing 6 already. Now, the one thing to note here is when you get a 4-link, this is when Orb of Storms will really pop off and might be extremely strong for the early acts and campaign. I'm not sure when you get a 4-link. I've heard it's like Act 2 or Act 3, so whenever it is, this would be the priority if you are doing the Orb of Storms playstyle. You add on Limit plus Unleash or Spell Echo, and essentially this is straight up doubles your Orb of Storms, thus doubling your Orb of Storms hits, giving you a quite insane effectiveness of added damage. I think it would be something along the lines of 650 to 700% effectiveness of added damage, just quick math real quick, which is a lot of damage for a no cooldown skills and very spammable. It's a lot of damage for campaign. It might be really insane. So yeah, I might try this playstyle, but yeah, that's pretty about it. Like I said, if you want to know what I'm doing, come to my stream. I'll of course also have like a day 1 or day 2 build update. I'll keep my full FAQ updated and my full Google Sheet updated, where I keep my build updated. So yeah, I do try to be as transparent as possible of what I'm doing. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. But yeah, that's about it.